If you are going through anxiety and you do not know what to do, you do not know how to change your life, you do not know how to properly function in the right way when you're being anxious, the first thing you really have to do is to properly internally register anxiety. Let me explain what this means. When you're feeling anxious, what really happens to a lot of people, and you might be one of them, is that they know that they're being anxious, but they're just going with the flow and they're not properly telling themselves that they're being anxious and there's something that has to be done about their anxiety. They just half recognize it and they move on with their lives without properly paying attention to what is exactly going on. If you're dealing with anxiety, the first thing you really have to do is to properly recognize it. Properly understand that you are going through anxiety by recognizing it. And only when you recognize it can you put your brain to work to do something about it. And that brings us to the next step. You have to choose to remove anxiety through development and change. A lot of people like to believe that their anxiety is just going to go away and they just carry on and they do their chores and they're not really working on themselves. They're not serious about their personal development. They're not serious about going through changes. They're not serious about moving on with life with the right amount of learning and the right amount of growth. Now, I'm not talking about anxiety that is just silenced temporarily. I'm talking about anxiety leaving permanently. Okay, many of the people that think that anxiety has gone when it is gone temporarily. We're not talking about that. You have to get rid of your anxiety permanently, and the way to get rid of it permanently is by lessening its intensity, by raising your personal standards, and by really changing in the right way towards the right destination while being conscious about the way you function. Now, I'll explain what this really means. When you choose a worthy direction, a direction that is really good for your development, good for your psychological profile, good for your emotional condition, and a direction that is going to help you become more emotionally mature, what really happens is you start to biologically change. Okay, so that direction is not just the direction alone, it will also help you transform as long as this direction is connected, a worthy direction towards a worthy goal. Now, you might be wondering, what does all of this have to do with anxiety? The answer, a lot. So if you're going through anxiety, do not just try to get rid of anxiety. You have to change the way your brain functions, and the way to change your brain functions is by learning, is by making new choices through knowledge. And you cannot make new choices through knowledge that you do not have. So if you're going through anxiety, slow down. Do not assume that anxiety and you are one. Do not assume that there's no way out. Do not assume that you're just going to let anxiety hit you and hurt you and lead you towards major self-sabotage, and when the job is done, it totally finishes you. It will just go and it will be fine. Do not function like that. Do not let anxiety amplify damage by minimizing it consciously. The way to deal with it is by understanding that anxiety is something you feel. Anxiety is not like your arm that it's just right there and you cannot detach from it. Okay, anxiety is something that can be greatly minimized, and the way to minimize it is by changing your perception towards it. And the way to change your perception towards it is by understanding that being anxious does not have to be amplified with a lot of reaction supplemented to it. What does that mean? It means that when you're being anxious and anxiety is making certain suggestions to you, do not use those suggestions to cause further damage to yourself. You must have the right countermeasures through response, through knowledge, through conscious and intentional choices you make to change your life. Okay? So for those people who are going through anxiety, they underestimate their personal capacity and they exaggerate the power of anxiety. Now, I'm not saying everybody's like that, but a lot of people who have a lot of anxiety simply do not understand their true potential and how deeply they're capable to change their lives. Why? Because they think that anxiety is a major problem and they can quite do nothing about it. Listen to this very carefully. When you make something as anxiety a major problem, you are giving it the power by your interpretation, by you assuming that it's major. Even if it has a significant role it's playing in your life, and is causing harm, you should not consider it as something that is more powerful than you. Okay? Now, if you want to get rid of it, the first step, like I said, you have to develop through learning. And after that, what you really have to do is to not let it become more amplified. You have to learn to disarm it. And the way to learn to disarm it is by not letting it become the main major problem. Okay? You must have bigger and important goals and more important things that you're focused on. And when you're focused on overcoming greater obstacles, for example, you're changing your diet, or you are drastically making changes in your health, you're making changes in your business. So when you're already dealing with more serious things than just passing anxiety, what really happens is you start to filter anxiety as something that is not as important, and as a result, it will be lower in intensity, right? Because the reticular activating system, the way the brain's filter system works, it closely monitors your values. It closely monitors what is really important to you. So if you make anxiety a very major and important problem, it will actually grow and amplify in its power. If you want to get rid of it, you have to disarm it. And the way to disarm it is to make something else a priority. Now, I'm not saying do not deal with your anxiety. What I'm saying is do not make overcoming it the biggest mission of your life. Well, does that mean that you should not focus on it? Again, I'm not saying that. I do understand that this is somewhat complex, but I'm giving you one of the most greatest ways to actually overcome anxiety. When you do not make it the most biggest issue in your life, you will be able to take care of it because you are not recognizing it as something that is really, really big. You're just knowing that you're dealing with something without actually measuring it as something that is huge, and you will feel capable. You will feel that you have the capacity, which you truly do, and you will be able to change your life. Why? Because you have bigger things to take care of, which does not mean that anxiety is any less serious issue. Of course, it's important for you to be anxiety free. But if you want to be anxiety free, you have to already be engaged in more important things instead of exaggerating the presence of anxiety in your life. Okay, a lot of people who are lacking in their goals, who are not living consciously, who are living impulsively and reactively, they're not being responsive enough, they're not seeking knowledge. Of course they're anxious because they're living a life that is not properly principled and purpose-centered. The more you start focusing on living your life through development, growth, and change, the more you will see differences in different areas of your life. So when you're going through anxiety, do not half register it. Notice that you're having it, and then take firm steps by putting it in the right place, in the right order, and not exaggerating its importance, and then make a commitment to disarm it, neutralize it, and then you will be able to properly manage your anxiety and systematically reduce it till it permanently goes away. Now, after you understand this, you have to track where your anxiety comes from. It could be some experiences you have had in the past. It could be something that is going on in your life. It could be somebody who progressively triggers your anxiety, whatever the matter is. It's important for you to understand that when you go to the root cause of anxiety, you will be able to understand the auditory, visual, verbal, sensational nodes that are attached to it so that you can start addressing where you're actually hurting. Okay, many people, they do not understand where they're actually hurting, and as a result they're not able to free themselves because they lack awareness. When you have awareness, you will be able to make better choices. And when you're not living with proper understanding of where the anxiety comes from, you might be too busy fighting with anxiety without really understanding that there is an active supply that is constantly loaded in your life. So it's not just about managing and removing and disarming anxiety, it's about stopping the root cause from producing the stimuli that can potentially lead to anxiety. And there are two sides to this. First, you need to control your anxiety, and at the same time, you need to track the stimuli and then remove the relationship you have with this stimuli by a different interpretation of what's really happening. I'll give an example. Let's just say someone tells you that you're not good enough. It could be someone who is from the elders in a very dysfunctional family, and this person is constantly belittling you, bullying you, constantly trying to discourage you by telling you things like you're not that good, shame on you. They're trying to make you feel guilty for something you have not done. Whatever the case is, you have to really understand that there's a difference between someone projecting misguidance on you and factual and actual foundational reality of you. Okay, there are two different things. You must generate your own reality by the truth. And the way to generate it by the truth is by having a proper mechanism of blocking the noises, of blocking the toxicity, of blocking the harmful things that people throw your way. Okay, now I'm not saying go cut off every family relationship. I'm not saying go sever family ties. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is you need to properly learn to manage yourself. You need to properly learn to block out the things that are not good for you. You need to block out the things that are not going to help you with your personal development and the health of your emotions and the health of your brain. Because a lot of times the real reason why anxiety comes to people is just because they're not having a mechanism to protect themselves, and there's all this inflow that is just received and internalized. Okay, so when you block away the things that are not meant to get inside you, as in get inside your mind, you will be able to take better care of yourself. Now, one of the reasons why people make this drastic mistake of establishing a relationship where they are automatically and impulsively and reactively absorbing harmful and toxic information that is misleading and inaccurate is because they have simply habitualized this pattern. Okay, so if you're going through a pattern and you keep going through it again and again and again, and you keep doing it again and again, it will become a habit. So you have to break this pattern, no matter how uncomfortable it is to you, by changing the relationship you have again with the stimuli. Okay, so if someone says something like you're not good enough and you're trying really hard, you're actually making the right changes to change your life, block out this person's opinion and imagine as if there is a metallic wall between you and this person. Okay, so the opinion is not getting through to you. It's important for you to really understand that the more you can properly realize how you function, the more better you will be able to harness your powers. Maybe you're more auditory, maybe you're more visual, maybe you have more sensational experiences and there's certain traumatic memories that you're trying to cleanse your nervous system of. Whatever the case is, in order to get rid of anxiety, you have to understand where it comes from, and it can be extremely uncomfortable if you've been avoiding facing anxiety. It could be totally uncomfortable, but you have to really understand this. Even if there's somewhat pain involved, we are fighting for freedom. Eventually, when you disperse anxiety by disarming it and understanding it and having the right internal countermeasures, you will be able to protect yourself. Okay, do not let people misguide you into believing things about yourself that are not true. By being more conscious and being more aware of your own reality, and your reality is that you have incredible, tremendous, brilliant potential, and all what you gotta do is to understand things properly, defend yourself better, and not absorb harmful information that is not good for you. Protect yourself, understand anxiety, and move on with confidence and firmness.